All right, so we're diving into the world of reality dating shows. And to really understand where it all began, we got to go back, way back to Blind Date. Remember that? Back in 99, July of 99, actually.
Oh, yeah, 99. The internet was still this new frontier, right? Like, we knew it was going to be big, but no one really knew how it was all going to shake out, especially when it came to, well, dating.
Totally. It was like the Wild West of love connections out there. And that's where Blind Date comes in. Talk about capturing a moment.
It did. It really bottled up that whole zeitgeist, didn't it? You had this surge of new technology, people dipping their toes into online dating. But there was also this underlying anxiety about it all.
Oh, for sure. Like, are we really going to trust algorithms to find us the one? But then again, maybe this whole internet thing could actually help us break free from those old, tired ways of meeting people.
Exactly. And Blind Date played right into that, right? It was like, forget the setup, forget the carefully crafted persona. Let's just throw two strangers together and see what happens.
With a camera crew in tow. Don't forget the cameras.
Yeah.
It was awkward, it was unpredictable, and let's be real, it was sometimes downright painful to watch. But we couldn't tear ourselves away.
No, you're right, we couldn't. And I think part of it was that Blind Date, even with all its cringeworthy glory, felt kind of real, especially compared to back then.
Oh, totally. Those perfectly scripted dates, the witty banter, the whole meet cute thing. Blind Date was like, nah, that's not how it goes down in the real world.
And you had Roger Lodge there with his dad jokes and that knowing grin. He was like the awkward uncle everyone invited to the family reunion just to see what he'd say.
Oh, he was the best. Okay, but here's the thing. Blind Date wasn't just about the laughs, right? It sparked some serious conversations about dating in a way that, honestly, we hadn't really seen before.
You're right. This was long before we were dissecting text messages and freaking out over emojis.
Yeah.
Blind Date gave us a glimpse into how people actually interacted, or at least how they interacted with a camera in their face.
Yeah, maybe a few too many cocktails.
Right. But it got people talking. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion on what made a good date, what were absolute deal breakers.
Did you see what she was wearing?
He ordered what?
It's like relationship analysis in real time.
And it was everywhere. Those viewing parties, man. You couldn't escape it.
Oh, tell me about it. It was the original watch party.
Yeah.
You'd get your friends together, grab some snacks, and just dissect every awkward moment, every cringeworthy pickup line.
Her laugh is kind of annoying, right?
It's brutal.
Yeah.
But also kind of amazing. Like, Blind Date gave us this permission to talk about dating more openly, more honestly. It wasn't this taboo subject anymore.
It's true. Blind Date didn't just reflect the dating scene of the late 90s. It actively shaped how we talked about it. And that, I think, is a really important part of its legacy.
And it's not like that influence disappeared, right? I mean, I look at the dating shows we have today. So much of it goes back to that Blind Date formula.
Oh, absolutely. The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, Love Island, they all owe a little something to Blind Date.
100%. It's like they took that basic blueprint, throw some people together, add a dash of competition, film the whole thing, and just ran with it.
Right. And those confessionals, those side interviews where people spill the tea, pure Blind Date.
Oh, totally. Remember those moments of truth segments? Like, Blind Date knew we couldn't get enough of those cringe-worthy dating disasters.
Oh, the best. Talk about relatable content. It's like we've all had those dates where you just want the earth to open up and swallow you whole.
Don't remind me.
But that's what made it so great, right? Like, Blind Date gave us permission to laugh at it all, to bond over the shared awkwardness of dating. And it also did something else, something kind of revolutionary for its time. It changed how we thought about meeting people.
This is huge. Because remember, back in the late 90s, online dating was still pretty new territory.
Yeah, it had this kind of shady reputation, like, oh, you're meeting people on the internet. What's wrong with you?
Exactly. But then here comes Blind Date, this show that's literally built around the premise of meeting a stranger and going on a date.
With cameras following your every move. Right. And sure, it was often a recipe for disaster, but it also planted this seed in our minds, this idea that maybe, just maybe, you could actually find love outside your usual circles.
Or at the very least, a good story for your next party. You know what else Blind Date had that I totally forgot about? A date doctor. Like an actual therapist on set, ready to deal with any post-date meltdowns.
For real? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Apparently, they were on standby for those dates that went particularly sideways, which, let's be honest, was a decent chunk of them.
I bet. But it speaks volumes about the show, right? It wasn't just about the laughs. It was about acknowledging that dating can be messy. It can be vulnerable.
Totally.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why Blind Date still resonates with us today, even with all the dating apps and the perfectly curated online personas. Because at its core, It was about real people trying to connect in a world that was changing faster than they could keep up.
And isn't that still true today, in a way? Like, haven't we just traded one set of dating anxieties for another?
100%. And I think to really appreciate how groundbreaking Blind Date was, we need to take a step back and consider the social climate of the late 90s. Seriously, think about it. The late 90s, I mean, we were all riding high on that dot-com boom, right? But at the same time, there was this sense of uncertainty. Like, is this whole internet thing going to last? Are we all going to get Y2K'd back to the Stone Age?
Oh, totally. It was this weird mix of, like, limitless possibility and this nagging feeling that maybe we were building it all on a house of cards, and dating was right there in the middle of it all.
Totally. I mean, think about how we were meeting people back then. It was all about, like, running into someone at the coffee shop or getting set up by a friend.
Right, or, hoping that person you met at that party would actually call you back.
Ugh, the waiting game.
Hmm.
But then you had the internet coming in hot with these early online dating sites popping up left and right. And suddenly, boom, there's this whole new world of potential connections right at your fingertips.
And it was kind of terrifying. I mean, think about it. You're basically putting yourself out there, for better or for worse, with very little control over who sees it.
So true. And I think Blind Date tapped into that fear, but also that excitement in a way that really resonated with people.
Totally. It was like this weird public experiment in what happens when you throw out the rule book on dating.
Which, let's be honest,
Yeah.
sometimes led to some pretty epic train wrecks.
Oh, absolutely. But that was part of the fun, right?
100%. But it also made us think, about what we're looking for in a partner, what we're willing to put up with, and how much of ourselves we're willing to put out there.
For sure. And let's not forget, this was also the era of girl power, right? The Spice Girls, Lilith Fair, women were demanding to be taken seriously.
Absolutely. So how do you think Blind Date fit into all of that?
Right.
Because on the one hand, you had women choosing their dates, which was pretty progressive for the time.
Mm.
But then, there were definitely moments where it felt a little, well, let's just say, behind the times.
Oh, totally. It was this weird push and pull. Like, the show was trying to figure out these gender roles right along with the rest of us.
Right. Like, can women be both strong and independent and still want to be swept off their feet? Can men be sensitive and vulnerable without being seen as, less than?
Exactly. And those are questions that, honestly, we're still grappling with today.
It's crazy to think that a show like Blind Date, with all its awkwardness, and let's be real, sometimes cringeworthy moments, could spark such deep conversations.
It is. But I think that's the power of good, or maybe good isn't even the right word, but a show that really taps into the zeitgeist, into what people are thinking and feeling at a particular moment in time.
It's like Blind Date held up this funhouse mirror to our collective dating anxieties and said, hey, you're not alone in this.
And whether we like to admit it or not, I think there's something really comforting about that.
Absolutely. It's like sometimes the best way to deal with the awkwardness of dating is to just laugh at it. And maybe, just maybe, learn a little something about ourselves along the way. So the next time you find yourself scrolling through dating apps or, I don't know, awkwardly trying to make small talk at a party, remember Blind Date.
It's a good reminder that no matter how much technology changes, some things, like the awkward, messy, often hilarious search for love, well, those things never really change.
Truth. Well, that's it for our deep dive into Blind Date. Be sure to tune in next time when we'll be dissecting another fascinating piece of pop culture history.